Welcome back up to the Vinyl Attic, where we're doing the thing. We're counting 100 albums that matter, 100 albums that should be in your collection, 100 albums that are worth seeking out that might not be the obvious choices. We're picking one tonight that is kind of obvious just because it was so huge and so important. We're going to talk about the third Run DMC album, Raising Hell. Comes out in May of 1986. There's a lot to talk about with regards to this record. Let me see if I can keep it brief. I've been out and I had a couple of whiskeys at our neighborhood bar called The Hilt, who is not sponsoring this video. So let me see if I can talk about this record. Okay, Run DMC. So the value of this record is that it's awesome. It's produced by Russell Simmons, who's the owner of Def Jam Records, and Rick Rubin. Rick Rubin, who had been a white guy producing a lot of rap records. He worked with some earlier Run DMC records. He worked with LL Cool J. He worked with the Beastie Boys. Later, he would branch out. In fact, after this project, then he produced Slayer and became known as kind of the quintessential rock producer. But Rick Rubin really cuts his teeth on this record. And this record kind of blows up. It kind of becomes really big. Becomes like this huge thing. They wrote it on the road while they were touring for King of Rock. And they used some of the guitar elements of the first album, Rock Box, the second album, the song King of Rock, and this one. And the thing that breaks through is the song Walk This Way, which obviously is the Aerosmith song. And the story behind it is that Jam Master Jay loved to find records. I mean, all of us that are vinyl collectors, we know that sometimes when you find a record on a whole album, in one moment of one song, there's a little riff that's like worth the whole thing. So you can find something in another old hip-hop record, like Curtis Blow, I think, shows up on this record. You could find something on a jazz record. Bob James is on this record. You could find something in, anything, including a rock record. And apparently one of the things that became popular on the two turntables with Jam Master Jay was the Aerosmith record Walk This Way from the 70s. So they would rap over to and you got two turntables and you got two Aerosmith records queued up to Walk This Way, and you can keep that groove just going and just rap over and over and over it. So that was sort of the genesis for that song. They record it. They sort of work very quickly on this record to get it out, and it takes off. It takes off. And what a lot of people don't realize is when MTV started, it was pretty much whites only. I want my MTV. A lot of Sting, a lot of white artists. It really wasn't until the end of the second year of MTV, second year, late 1982 and then into 83 when Michael Jackson's Thriller comes out, that there's sort of a door open for black artists. But there's still no rap music being played. There's no Grandmaster Flash. There's no Treacherous 3. There's no Curtis Blow being played on the MTV channel. This record, since it has this hook, and instead of sampling Walk This Way, which would be the normal thing. And there's a lot of great samples on this record. The Knack is sampled, Tony Basil, Mickey is sampled. I mean, there's just so many great samples on this record. Instead of just lifting that sample, because they weren't suing people yet for sampling in 1986, they brought in Aerosmith. They got Steven Tyler and Joe Perry to come into the studio and jam on Walk This Way with them. And a video comes out that has Run DMC on stage, and then Aerosmith breaks through the wall. Steven Tyler, walk this way! And all of a sudden, there's sort of the white rock artist seal of approval of black music, and you get this explosion. And some of that had started to seep through. I mean, I was lucky. I don't want to toot my own hip-hop horn, but I liked rap music before. In fact, I got called a lot of names in my high school for liking black music, and one was N-Lover, so fill in the blank on that one. But I had a friend in my folk guitar class named Sharon who's like, you like rap music? You like hip-hop? And I'm like, what is that? And I started, buying up all this music. And, of course, I worked in a record store, so I got to hear a lot of this stuff and love it. And loved Run DMC. I mean, the first 12-inch that they put out before they ever had an album, it's like that. And that's the way it is. I love that record. I still love that record. I still occasionally dust it off and spin it. I was a big fan, but also in 1980, the band Blondie had a pretty significant hit with the song Rapture, which was based on this hip-hop promoter in the South Bronx, Fab Five Freddy, bringing his rap artists to CBGB's and the Lower East Side of Manhattan and playing punk rock music and breakdancing and graffiti art, all the hip-hop culture for the white kids. And then, you know, the people in Blondie saw that and are like, that's the next cool thing. And they did Rapture. So there was a window in 1980, 81 for a lot of white kids to start kind of experimenting and liking rap, but it was still pretty underground. And then with Walk This Way, the door is opened wide. And rap music has this huge, not birth, but sort of birth to the coming out, like a debutante ball coming out to the sort of white audience in middle America. And there's a series of hits that come from this record. It's Tricky, which is such a great record that samples My Sharona, My Adidas, which creates a whole shoe fashion style to go around with hip-hop from Adidas shoes. And the hits keep on coming. This record is the first rap album to go platinum and then go multi-platinum. There's just no stopping for over this record. And so now white kids in Idaho who've never seen an African-American person in person are all about rap music. Rap music is now bled over and spread into the mainstream, and Run DMC is huge. And they sort of surf on the success. It's not until another 3 years that their next album, Tougher Than Leather, comes out in 1988, which is a pretty great album. I mean, it has the great song Mary Mary, which is a riff of a Monkees song of all things. But creates an interesting schism, because what happens when your music is of your culture? Starting in 1973, 74 in the South Bronx, this music was really meant to express the gritty reality of being poor and black in urban America. And all of a sudden, kids in Idaho are kids that are not at all concerned with life in urban America. This is their favorite genre. And there's a term for this in sociology. We call it value. Did I mention I had some whiskeys tonight? We call it value stretch, because the art form is stretched away from the values that were behind its original creation. It's sort of like white kids with dreadlocks. Like, they don't really understand Rastafarianism, and that they're the downpresser of Babylon. So all of a sudden, all these white kids are listening to music, and certainly that has been a problem of hip-hop. I mean, I remember when I bought this house, and this neighborhood was a heavily African-American neighborhood, and I rolled up in front of my house in my Jeep Wrangler, busting out some Tupac really loud, and an African-American teenager who lives across the street said, "You don't know Tupac." And I'm like, I know, I wouldn't be like, I'm a sociologist, I know the concept of value stretch, but I'm like, I know what you're talking about. He's like, "You don't know Tupac. Like, that's not your music. That music is for us. What are you, white guy in a frickin' Jeep, listening to my music?" So rap music kind of had a little bit of an identity crisis because of the popularity of this record, because of this value stretch, and was forced to kind of go back to the drawing board, to reinvent itself, to create something that was harder to diffuse. And so the response to this record, or one of the responses to this record, was gangster rap. Gangster rap, where we're going to talk about the gritty, violent, misogynistic, homophobic underworld of the gang in a way that glorifies drugs and uses the N-word a whole bunch that white kids aren't going to be able to rap along with at their high school football practice, because it is so of the underground subculture of black America. And there are other sort of offshoots too, including the Afrocentric hip-hop that we get, the political hip-hop bands like Tribe Called Quest and Public Enemy and all that stuff that happens. But there is this real sort of reinvention, because what happens when your music is taken over and colonized by white kids. So this record is significant in that history of hip-hop. The great news is that this record is timeless. I mean, I've been listening to it a whole bunch lately, and I was reminded that in 1986, when this record came out, I spent about a month living in Paris, just for the hell of it, and I had a Walkman. For people who don't know, it was a little thing that played cassette tapes, and you had these earphones that you listened to. And I would be riding the metro with my Walkman, and I really only had one tape at that point. I had a couple mixtapes, but I had one C90. Ask your grandparents what a C90 was. 45 minutes on each side of the tape. So on one side of the tape was Run DMC's Raising Hell album, this album. And the other side was Dwight Yoakam's Guitars and Cadillacs. And I'd be, spending all my time in Paris listening to either Run DMC or Dwight Yoakam saying, this is our music. We created this. I didn't create either of those genres, but they were quintessentially American. And as an American expatriate living in Paris, it gave me a connection to all that was great about American culture. Run DMC still, are legends in music. This often is seen as the golden era, or the album that creates the golden era of hip-hop. Changes dramatically soon after that because of its popularity. But I wanted to spend some time talking about this record. This record is a must-have if you have any love for the hip-hop genre. Produced by Rick Rubin, May 1986, Raising Hell. So important. And I'm going to say this, but first let me tell you about what we're going to talk about next week. Speaking of my friend Sharon in my guitar class took this little white Stone Mountain boy under her black wing and turned me on to a whole bunch of cool music that white kids in Stone Mountain, Georgia weren't listening to. So in honor of Sharon, we're going to talk about a genre we haven't talked about yet, which is dub reggae, which is kind of a subgenre of reggae music. And if you're going to talk about dub reggae, there's a couple, LKJ, Oswald, but we got to talk about Black Uhuru. We're going to talk about Black Uhuru and their monumental record, Dub Factor, which might require a big spliff to be smoked while we talk about it, because it is certainly head music and music about being stoned. So we're going to talk about Black Uhuru next time. But in the meantime, Run DMC for you. This music matters. This album, freaking A. It's like the Sgt. Peppers of hip-hop, or the Meet the Beatles of hip-hop. That might be better. This album matters. This whole genre matters. All the transformations it's gone through since then, and into the future, and you matter. So let's talk about it.